July 14th is around the corner. ISO 20022 implementation is happening here in the United States. The FedWire and FedNow systems are moving all to this new messaging standard. How is XRP and Ripple going to be impacted by this? Also, Ripple has just applied to become a bank. If they are actually a bank inside of the FedNow ecosystem, what is that going to do for Ripple and, of course, the FedNow payment system? Will XRP be easily used by banks and infrastructures because of Ripple becoming a bank? I want to answer all of those questions and so much more in this video. Let's get into it. So the FedNow service has now over 1,400 participants headquartered in all 50 states. They actually have a full list here. If you wanted to see, I can pull this up for you and show you what this looks like. While that's doing that, let's just go to like what is actually happening here on July 14th. So FRFS will adopt ISO 20022 message format for the Fed's wire fund service in a single day implementation strategy on July 14th, 2025. This implementation, we will sunset the existing proprietary FedWire application interface manual format and replace all FAIM messages with ISO 20022 messages. As of June 18th, it is confirmed that in fact it is happening on July 14th. So it was pushed back before. July 14th is of course going to be the day. As part of your overall readiness and preparations for the upcoming migration, we highly recommend that you finalize your preparedness and contingency plans as soon as possible. It is critical that you have a contingency plan in the event that you are not ready to send or receive ISO 20022 messages through the FedWire Fund service, or your wire ecosystem is not ready for ISO 20022 messages. So this is the federal government of the United States basically telling banks and financial institutions that, hey, this is happening on July 14th. We are moving to this new standard. If you are not on this new standard, you need to plan accordingly right now. I'd imagine that most of these big banks have already made the jump, but there's going to be a lot of smaller to mid-sized banks or credit unions that might not have a plan here. So it's going to be interesting to see how this is going to impact it overall. And I, of course, will bring you all of that information. And so it doesn't really give you a good list here. So I don't want to spend too much time on this because I have a lot of other information I want to show you. So here is, what does it mean for the ISO migration on July 14th for FedWire? Of course, we know the ISO migration for FedWire, July 14th, 2025. That means the Federal Reserve's FedWire Fund service will switch from its current proprietary message format to ISO 20022 messaging standard for all wire transfers. All wire messages sent through FedWire must use ISO 20022 format starting July 14th. ISO 20022 is a global standard already being used by international payment systems. Its adoption aims to improve data quality, increase straight-through processing, and enable new services such as enhanced remittance information and payment tracking. It talks about message fields. We don't really need to get into that. Institutions must ensure readiness. This includes updating software, training staff, validating correspondent banking arrangements, and preparing contingency plans in case of migration issues. Testing and verification will happen on July 11th. To ensure a smooth transition. This migration applies to the FedWire Fund service and FedNow. It does not affect the FedWire Securities Service or FedACH. Failure to comply will mean institutions cannot send or receive wire transfers. So this is a big deal. It does talk about enhanced interoperability with ISO 20022, provides a universal messaging standard, regulatory alignment, getting the world on the same standard, potential for broader adoption, and then average daily funds messaging is about 850,000, 860,000 messages per day. And it talks about annual volume, 209,916,835 transfers daily, annually. I just wanted to see how much value we're talking about here. And then, is FedNow replacing FedWire? FedNow is not replacing FedWire. The two systems serve different purposes and will continue to operate in parallel, each addressing distinct needs within the U.S. payment system. And then I just wanted to, obviously get some additional information about how much money we're talking about here could be in these new ISO messages. And the FedNow system does right now about 540 million per day. So moving to this ISO format, you would be able to use crypto, XRP or other ISO compliant tokens if you wanted to do some type of instant settlement and have that settle instantaneously. FedWire processes about $4.65 trillion per day, so you can basically see May 2025 from last year, 2024. It actually went from 4.52 trillion to 4.65 trillion. So you can see more and more value is being processed per day. I wanted to take a look at, if Ripple becomes a bank, is that going to have an impact inside of FedNow or FedWire? So if Ripple becomes a US national bank and secures a Fed master account, it would gain direct access to the Federal Reserve's FedNow instant payment infrastructure. This would bring several significant benefits. And I know what you're going to say is, Sensei, Ripple and XRP can already be used in the system due to other partnerships. You're absolutely right and spot on. This would allow Ripple to be one of those institutions. So right now, Ripple is connected to an institution that is a part of FedNow. Ripple would be in FedNow, just like those other institutions are. That would be the difference. Ripple could offer instant payment services to its customers, settling transactions in seconds, 24/7, 365, without relying on intermediary banks. So they're partners, right? Ripple could do this themselves. If you're a financial institution that is like, oh man, Ripple's technology is awesome, we want to adopt it. Now Ripple is looking to become your competition. I wonder what that's going to do. Also, I've been thinking, if Ripple offered account services to regular people like me and you, would you move from the bank you are right now and go to Ripple's bank? I think I would. At least open an account there, put some money and just see what kind of services they offer. I think that would be pretty cool. All right, let's get back into this. Cost reduction and operational efficiency. Direct FedNow access would eliminate the need for third-party payment processes, lowering transaction costs and simplifying operations. Ripple could streamline its back office functions, reduce fraud risk through real-time transaction visibility, and allocate more resources to innovation and customer service. Talks about enhanced liquidity and market reach. As a direct FedNow participant, Ripple could facilitate large-scale, high-liquidity transactions, potentially handling trillions of dollars as FedNow expands to more banks and institutions. I like this sentence, handling trillions of dollars. That could be just what we need, just what the doctor ordered. This could dramatically increase liquidity on the XRP ledger and Ripple stablecoin. It also would give Ripple a competitive edge. Gaining a national bank charter and FedNow access would boost Ripple's credibility in the traditional financial sector, making it more attractive to partners, clients, and previously hesitant to work with Ripple due to risk and uncertainty. Ripple could offer innovative payment products such as real-time payroll, bill pay, and instant settlement services directly to consumers and businesses, keeping pace or surpassing fintech competitors. They would also give them a broader integration with industry and more influence. With direct FedNow connectivity, Ripple could integrate its blockchain solutions more deeply into the US payments infrastructure, potentially influencing standards and practices across the industry, something that already Ripple is doing globally. Ripple's technology could be leveraged by thousands of financial institutions as FedNow scales, given its existing partnerships and technology. This is kind of what we are all hoping and praying for, right? Mass adoption of Ripple's technology and, of course, XRP to move value and RLUSD for that liquidity. Regulatory strategic positioning. A bank charter would place Ripple under the U.S. regulatory oversight, potentially resolving longstanding legal uncertainties. Also, direct versus indirect access. Right now, Ripple has indirect access through some of these partnerships. Let me just show you these. These are some of the first original institutions that were connected to FedNow to participate in the FedNow ecosystem. Every company or institution you see in green here is a Ripple partner or has some type of connections, either direct connections or indirect connections to Ripple. So I just wanted to show you that. That's pretty cool looking chart there. It talks about direct and indirect. I don't think it's kind of self-explanatory. Operational regulatory impact. Direct access would allow Ripple to settle payments faster at low cost. Some of the stuff we kind of read before. Becoming a bank would provide Ripple with a stamp of regulatory approval, and then broader ecosystem impact. So definitely some really cool things that could in fact impact Ripple's overall business. And of course, looking back at the history of Ripple working with the US government, it is kind of shocking that the SEC would come and sue Ripple and not like Ethereum or some of these other more questionable companies. Ripple has done everything that they could from day one to work, in good faith with the US government. And so you start to wonder, like, hey, is Ripple ever going to get credit for all of the time and energy, hard work, their, team involvement with the government that they deserve. And I think that you will start to see that here. Of course, Ryan Zagone, formerly Ripple, was working, in the system 2017, 2018. Federal Reserve Payments Pilot incorporates Ripple, partner of Volante Technologies. Federal Reserve Task Force, Ripple improves speed, transparency, and global payments. Former advisor Michael Barr will supervise the Federal Reserve. I mean, everything that's happening here is going to push us towards more adoption. And of course, Mr. Poole, green means go. It's interesting how accurate this person has been calling this out. And of course, when we look at the overall market of what we're trying to get here too, yes, payments will be sped up to instantaneously. You can use crypto to do all this, but also the stock market is going to be going full digital. This is the SEC. The head of the SEC telling you that tokenization is an innovation and the agency is committed to advancing it. This is a really big moment. Let me play this for you.
Tokenization is an innovation. And we at the SEC should be focused on how do we advance innovation in the marketplace. And so I would argue here over the last several years, the SEC has been standing athwart efforts to innovate in the marketplace because things have been unclear. The rules have not been clear. We've had regulation through enforcement. That day is over. We are now, my whole goal is to make things transparent, from the regulatory aspect and give people a firm foundation upon which to innovate and come out with new products and so that they know what they're doing.
I think there are two things to think about, Andrew, and that's tokenization of U.S. stocks, which is one thing which could drive a lot of cost savings for all settlement times.
I'm talking about if you wanted to tokenizing SpaceX, which is a private company.
And then there's also an access to private credit, I think you were mentioning, which is a complete individual investor access to private credit, which is also another sort of tricky area in that this is also, as you mentioned, it's not as much liquidity. Valuations are very difficult, particularly, I would imagine, for an individual investor. I mean, there are a lot of things here that are new frontiers for investors. Where do you stand on that?
Well, two questions. So
I wasn't know if she was asking a question or if she was trying to I don't know what was going on there for about 35 seconds.
As far as tokenization and other innovations in the marketplace to make trading and holding securities easier and with quick settlement, my predecessor pushed for what we call T+1, meaning settlement and clearance the day after the trade, the trading day. And so tokenization and other aspects of doing that tokenization in the marketplace is yet the next step to have much more efficiency in the marketplace and certainty of having a trade settle.
Really quickly though, guys, just to give you my thoughts on ISO 20022 implementation. Yes, this is an incredible thing that we're moving to this new messaging standard. I do not think that on July 14th, XRP or any other ISO asset is going to full send because of this. I still think this is going to be a slow rollout, but I would love to be wrong. Just never get married to a date in crypto. But that is my true belief that I don't think much is going to happen. That's not going to stop me from adding more XRP and other assets as I go here. But let me know what you think down in the comments, because I'd love to better understand if you think this is going to full send, going to help a little bit, or it's going to be kind of like another nothing burger on an exact date. But in the future, this could have tremendous impact. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Crypto Sensei. Make sure you're following. Nothing in this video should be taken as financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. Please seek financial advice if you need it. Let's get back to the video.